We've all been there. The colleague who shamelessly takes credit for your hard-won breakthroughs, the neighbour who seems to thrive on manufactured drama, or the family member who possesses a surgical precision for pushing your most sensitive buttons. These encounters are more than just minor annoyances. They're emotional hijackings. They leave you feeling exhausted, frustrated, and, if you let them, completely drained of your creative energy. Left unchecked, these interactions become destructive to your long-term peace of mind, poisoning your evening and stealing your sleep long after you've left the room. It feels as though these people have a lease on your thoughts, and they are living there rent-free, but what if you could remain fundamentally unshakable? Imagine a world where their vitriol simply bounces off you like rain off a polished stone. Today, we're diving deep into the Stoic toolkit, a 2,000-year-old psychological framework designed not to change the difficult people around you, but to transform your internal response to them. Stoicism isn't about being an emotionless robot. It's about being robust. It's about building an inner citadel that no amount of external rudeness, incompetence, or malice can breach. By the end of this guide, you won't just be putting up with difficult people. You will learn how to use them as the very whetstone to sharpen your character and resilience. Before we begin, if you are ready to reclaim your mental real estate and lead a more intentional, resilient life, make sure to subscribe and join our growing community of modern Stoics. Let's build your fortress together. The challenge isn't actually the person you can't stand, it's your reaction to them. This is the most difficult pill to swallow in the entire Stoic pharmacy. We naturally prefer to believe that our anger is a logical, inevitable byproduct of someone else's malice, a cosmic tax we are forced to pay because they are being difficult. We frame ourselves as the victim of their personality. But Stoicism argues a much harsher, more liberating truth. When someone annoys you, you're handing them the keys to your internal kingdom. You're granting a person you don't even like the power to dictate your heart rate, your blood pressure, and your mood at the dinner table 3 hours after the interaction has ended. If they can make you angry, they own you. The myth of moral outrage. Marcus Aurelius, who governed the Roman Empire while surrounded by backstabbing courtiers, power-hungry generals, and a crumbling plague-stricken society, famously opened his meditations with a morning mantra. He reminded himself that he would inevitably meet the meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and unsociable. Crucially, he didn't say he might meet them. He accepted it as an absolute mathematical certainty of the human condition. The problem arises when we expect the world to be otherwise. We walk into our offices, our family gatherings, or our digital spaces with a subconscious, unspoken demand that everyone be kind, logical, and fair. This is a form of insanity. When people fail to meet this imaginary standard, we experience what psychologists call cognitive friction. This friction is the spark that ignites our resentment. We suffer because we are demanding a reality that doesn't exist. We are like a person getting angry at a dog for barking, or the sea for being salty. By refusing to accept the nature of the meddling person, we allow them to win by catching us off guard. Every time you are surprised by someone's selfishness, you have failed to see the world as it truly is. The cost of internal rent. When you spend your commute replaying a conversation, imagining the witty retort you should have said, or venting to a spouse about a colleague's arrogance, that person is living rent-free in your head. In Stoic terms, this is a profound loss of sovereignty. You have allowed an external factor to colonize your internal sanctuary. We often think that by being angry, we are standing up for ourselves, or punishing the other person. In reality, the other person is likely blissfully unaware of your turmoil, perhaps even enjoying their day while you are poisoning your own well. The Stoic philosopher Seneca likened anger to a falling building. It crushes everything beneath it, including its own foundation. They win not because they are stronger or more clever than you, but because they have successfully diverted your focus from your own life and onto their flaws. You are wasting the limited energy of your life on a ghost. The ego's trap. The need to be right. Why is it so hard to let go? The answer lies in the ego. Our ego tells us that if we don't react, we are being weak, defeated, or disrespected. We feel a biological primal urge to defend our territory, not our physical land, but our intellectual and social standing. If a colleague takes credit for your work, your ego screams that justice must be served. But the Stoic asks, does their lie actually change who you are? If you are a person of high character and skill, Their claim to your work is a falsehood that exists only in the minds of the ill-informed. By becoming enraged, you trade your tranquility, a good that is entirely within your control, for a reputation that is entirely in the hands of others. You are trading gold for dross. You're allowing their lack of integrity to erode your own composure. In the end, they didn't just steal your credit, they stole your peace. The mirror of our own weakness. There is a deeper, more uncomfortable reason why they win. They often reflect something about ourselves that we haven't reconciled. Stoicism teaches us that we are usually most repulsed by the faults in others that we secretly fear in ourselves or that we have worked hard to suppress. When we meet an arrogant person, our intense reaction might stem from our own struggle with pride. When we meet a lazy person, it might trigger our own hidden fears of inadequacy. Stoics use the difficult person as a diagnostic tool. If someone can upset you, they have found a hole in your armor. They have pointed out a place where you are not yet resilient. In this sense, the enemy is actually a scout reporting back on the weaknesses of your own character. They win when they expose that your happiness is still dependent on the behavior of strangers. The error of judgment. To stop them from winning, we must realize that nothing is inherently bad or annoying in a vacuum. It is our judgment that labels the event. A person speaks words. Those words travel through the air as sound waves. They only become insults when your mind processes them, compares them against your ego, and decides to feel offended. Epictetus, the slave-turned-philosopher, taught that it is not things that disturb us, but our opinions about them. If you remove the opinion that I have been harmed, the harm itself disappears. This isn't about pretending things didn't happen, it's about radical accountability. It means that while you aren't responsible for what they do, you are 100% responsible for how you feel about it. The moment you blame your mood on someone else, you have forfeited your freedom. The social duty and the teeth analogy. Marcus Aurelius argued that humans were made for one another. He used the analogy that we are like the upper and lower rows of teeth. We are designed to work together, even when it's uncomfortable. When you treat a person you can't stand with hostility, you're like a tooth trying to bite the other tooth. It doesn't help the body, it only causes pain to both. They win when they convince you that you are separate from them, that you're enemies in a zero-sum game of status. The Stoic perspective is that the person harming you is actually harming themselves more, because they are damaging their own soul and their capacity for reason. When you see a jerk as a person with a diseased mind, your anger turns to a sort of clinical pity. You wouldn't be angry at a person with a broken leg for limping. Why be angry at a person with a broken character for being rude? The ultimate victory. The moment you stop trying to fix the other person and start focusing exclusively on your own response, the power dynamic flips. When you can look at a person who is actively trying to provoke you and feel nothing but a mild sense of curiosity, or even better, nothing at all, you have won. The problem of difficult people is actually an invitation to the greatest gym in the world, the gym of the soul. Without the arrogant, the dishonest, and the cruel, you would have no opportunity to practice the virtues of patience, integrity, and forgiveness. They provide the resistance you need to grow strong. Therefore, they only win when they make you like them. If they are rude and you remain kind, they have failed. If they are chaotic and you remain calm, you have achieved the ultimate Stoic victory, the maintenance of your own character regardless of the weather outside. You have become unshakable. To handle the impossible person, Stoicism offers 3 core shifts in perspective that move you from a victim of circumstance to a master of self. 1. The dichotomy of control, drawing the line of sovereignty. The most fundamental concept in Stoic philosophy is the dichotomy of control. Epictetus, who spent his early life as a slave and thus understood the lack of external control better than anyone, began his Enchiridion with a simple premise. Some things are up to us, and some things are not up to us. When it comes to the person you can't stand, nearly everything about them falls into the not up to us category. You cannot control the words that leave their mouth. You cannot control the sneer on their face, the passive-aggressive tone of their emails, or the fundamental flaws in their character. You cannot control their past traumas that made them this way, nor can you control their future choices. The strategy here is to draw a bright, uncrossable line between their actions and your peace. Stoics categorize everything outside our own will as indifferent. This doesn't mean you don't care at all. It means that these things cannot, by definition, affect your moral worth or your happiness unless you permit them to. When you realize that their rudeness is an external event, no different than a thunderstorm or a flat tire, it loses its personal sting. You stop asking, "Why are they doing this to me?" and start stating, "They are doing what they do. Now, what will I do?" If you decide they cannot hurt you, they haven't. The only way they can truly harm you is if they convince you to abandon your own virtue and respond with equal toxicity. 2. The clumsy surgeon. Lens, the pity of ignorance. The second shift requires a radical change in how we perceive the malice of others. Marcus Aurelius and Socrates shared a profound belief. No one does wrong on purpose. This sounds counterintuitive. We think, of course they are being a jerk on purpose. They enjoyed that insult. But the Stoic argues that every person is always acting in pursuit of what they perceive to be good or appropriate for them at that moment. The person who belittles you in a meeting thinks they are protecting their status or being efficient. They are operating with a flawed map of the world. They believe that being arrogant or dishonest is a viable path to happiness. Stoics viewed this as a form of moral ignorance, a blindness to what is actually good. This is the clumsy surgeon lens. If a surgeon were trying to help you but accidentally nicked an artery because they were poorly trained or lacked steady hands, you might be upset, but you wouldn't hate them with the same fire you'd feel for an assassin. You would see them as incompetent, not necessarily evil. Just as you wouldn't be angry at a blind man for bumping into you in a hallway, the Stoic argues you shouldn't be angry at someone blind to virtue. They are effectively mentally impaired in the realm of character. When you look at the person you can't stand through this lens, your anger begins to dissolve into a strange kind of clinical pity. You realize they are the primary victims of their own behavior. They have to live inside that toxic mind every single day. You only have to deal with them for 10 minutes. 3. The mirror effect. The two handles of every situation. Finally, we reach the most active part of the strategy, the mirror effect. Epictetus famously taught that every matter has two handles, one of which will bear its weight, the other not. When someone treats you poorly, you are presented with these two handles. The first handle is the wrongdoing handle. You can grab onto the fact that they were unfair, that they lied, or that they were rude. If you pick up the situation by this handle, it will be too heavy to carry. It will fill you with resentment and a desire for justice that you likely cannot achieve. This handle leads to a spiral of victimhood. The second handle is the virtue handle. This is the handle of "I can use this to practice." In this perspective, the difficult person is no longer an obstacle. They're a training tool. They are the sparring partner sent by the universe to help you build your patience muscles. This is where the mirror comes in. When you see someone acting out of pocket, instead of looking at them, you look at the mirror of your own reaction. You ask, what part of my ego is being bruised right now? What virtue am I currently lacking that makes this so painful? How can I respond in a way that proves my character is superior to this situation? If you need to practice patience, you need someone to test your patience. If you need to practice forgiveness, you need someone to wrong you. Without the impossible person, your philosophy is just words on a page. They provide the resistance necessary for growth. By grabbing the handle of opportunity, you transform a negative encounter into a personal victory. You aren't tolerating them. You're using them to become a better version of yourself. Synthesizing the strategy. When you combine these three shifts, your social reality changes. You start by acknowledging that their behavior is outside your control, the dichotomy. You then realize that their behavior is a result of their flawed understanding of life, the clumsy surgeon. Finally, you choose to pick up the situation by the handle of growth, the mirror effect. By the time you have processed these three steps, the impossible person has lost their power over you. They are no longer a villain in your story. They are simply a difficult condition of the environment, like a headwind for a pilot. You don't get angry at the wind for blowing against you. You simply adjust your flaps and fly the plane. This is the ultimate Stoic strategy, turning the impossible person into a possible path toward wisdom. You realize that while you cannot choose who you encounter in this life, you have absolute sovereign authority over how you allow those encounters to shape your soul. The true climax of the Stoic path doesn't take place in the heat of a confrontation or during a dramatic standoff with an adversary. It happens in the quiet, cool hours of the morning, long before you even leave your house. This is the practice of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. While modern self-help often encourages us to visualize only success and positive vibes, the Stoic knows that the most dangerous thing you can carry into your day is the hope for a smooth one. By hoping for kindness from everyone you meet, you're setting a trap for your own peace. When the neighbor is rude or the colleague is dismissive, the shock of the unexpected event is what causes your emotional collapse. You feel violated because your internal blueprint for the day didn't include conflict. The premeditatio malorum shatters this vulnerability. In this morning ritual, you sit in silence and mentally rehearse your day. You don't just visualize your commute or your meetings, you visualize the collision. You see that specific person you can't stand. You hear their grating voice, see the condescending tilt of their head, and anticipate the exact dishonest or arrogant thing they're likely to say. But here is the key. You don't just visualize their behavior, you visualize your response. In your mind's eye, you feel the heat rising in your chest, the biological urge to snap back, to defend your ego, or to win the argument. Then you practice the Stoic gap. You see yourself staying silent. You visualize yourself taking a calm, measured breath. You watch yourself looking at the person not with rage, but with a clinical, quiet detachment. You rehearse being unshakable. By the time the actual confrontation happens, the villain has lost their primary weapon, the element of surprise. When they finally say that rude thing, you don't recoil in shock. Instead, you think, there it is, exactly as I rehearsed. You've already won because you're playing out a script you've already mastered. The climax of Stoic practice is the profound, bone-deep realization that their rudeness is their problem, not yours. You finally understand that their behavior is a reflection of their character, a ledger of their own internal chaos, while your reaction is the ultimate reflection of yours. To get angry is to admit that their character has power over your soul. To remain calm is to demonstrate that you are the sole governor of your internal kingdom. This is the moment you stop being a victim of them and start being the master of you. Dealing with difficult people the Stoic way isn't about being a doormat, it's about being a fortress. It is common to mistake Stoic calm for passivity, but in reality, it is the highest form of self-assertion. When you refuse to be baited into an argument, you aren't giving in. You're choosing not to participate in a game that is beneath you. You recognize that other people's opinions and actions are indifferents, external factors that, much like the weather or the tides, have no power to change who you are or the quality of your character unless you voluntarily hand over the keys. True power is the ability to remain centered while the storm rages around you. Silence is often the ultimate answer because it serves as a vacuum, sucking the oxygen out of the other person's fire. By maintaining your composure, you keep your inner citadel intact and force the difficult person to contend with their own reflection. Summary of the Stoic approach: expect the friction. Wake up knowing you will encounter the ungrateful and the arrogant. When you aren't shocked, you aren't wounded. Pity the source. Recognize that a person who acts with malice is suffering from a sickness of the soul. Pity their ignorance rather than hating their actions. Protect the fortress. Your peace of mind is your most valuable possession. Never trade it for the cheap satisfaction of a witty retort or a moment of rage. The next time you encounter that person who drains your energy, try the pause of power. Before you respond, take one deep breath and ask yourself, does this person deserve to have power over my emotions? By creating this small gap between stimulus and response, you reclaim your sovereignty. Leave a comment below. What is one specific Stoic quote or mindset shift that helps you stay calm under pressure? Whether it's Marcus Aurelius's meditations or a personal mantra, share your wisdom. Let's learn from each other and build a community of unshakable resilience.